I don't know if you're thinking about it as you write this. There are resonances over the years with other heroes, also African-American heroes who broke through. I was part of the Holiday Inn crowd at down on Madison and Halsted the night of the Ali Foreman fight in Zimbabwe.
No, Zaire.
And Zaire, sorry. Yeah. Rumble in the jungle. Uh-huh. Well, there were about 20 of us, and we rented a room. I was one of two girls. The rest were guys. We were all there to see Ali. And when it was over, and there were balconies off every room, everybody was out there yelling, Ali, Bumbaya, and getting in the elevator and going down. It was an experience in itself. So, a lot of us can remember similar kinds of moments that you're describing. So it has a universal appeal, what you're covering. So I want to say, go for it. Affirm that what you write is important.
Well, I hope it's important because, I was speaking to one of the customers here yesterday at the Heartland.
At the Buffalo Bar?
Yeah, at the Buffalo Bar. And I asked him, or Michael asked him about Joe Louis, and he didn't know who Joe Louis was.
And he's a young athlete.
And he's a young athlete.
Right.
But again, I didn't think it really was his fault.
No.
Because I was a teacher for a while, and a lot of the students that I was teaching never heard of Paul Robeson, for example.
Right.
Or Marion Anderson, or even Jesse Owens. And so if you don't get that information very early, and it's not something you see on television very often, sometimes you miss it. But It's important that someone remind them that there was someone before.
It's like when my partner Michael James put together the shirt, it's called Take a Stand, picturing the Juan Carlos and, the power salute at the 68 Olympics, which is history in itself. Not only they're standing there and doing that and why they did it, but at that Olympics, which followed incredible oppression of the student movement and actual murder in the streets of Mexico City right before the Olympics. So when you do spotlight this history, you teach a lot of history.
Yes.
In so doing.
I agree. Well, one of the things that I discovered was that people who actually remember seeing Joe Louis fight or during his period are no longer alive.
Yes.
They're in their late 80s or early 90s. And about 4 months ago, I decided I was going to try to find people and talk to them about Joe Louis. Primarily black people, because of the impact he had on them. And I went to Harlem and visited the Schoenberg Library of Research and Sylvia's Restaurant, two very popular places. And I would take some people to lunch or buy some people a hot dog or whatever to get them to talk to me. And I was still amazed at the impact, even till this day, that this man has. And they would sometimes would cry, and sometimes they say, "Man, it makes me shiver when I think about that man," and so on.
You're giving me the chills, dude.
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to read a couple of the interviews for you. They're quite short.
Lay it on us.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tilly Peterson. Never mind when I was born. That's my business. The main thing is, New York is my home, but it sure has changed more than a little. No more little shops, no more family stores, nobody knows nobody, but I still love what's left. When the Brown Bomber was the champ, this place was for us black people. Nowadays, people don't really know the old days and the old ways. They don't appreciate their heritage. Why don't they teach these kids how it was back then? They probably wouldn't listen no how. Joe Louis is what you would call a man's man. He was strong, he was tough, but he was tender with his women. Don't ask me how I know. That's my business. All I can tell you about Joe Louis is that he sure made us proud to be a Negro. Not African American, I said Negro. Black people loved him and adored him. While he was champion, we all had hope. He was from black-eyed peas and collard greens. Ali was all right, so was Ray Robinson. Now, there was a sweet man. But Joe Louis, he had it all. Ain't no more coming like him down the assembly line. He shined on all of us. And as these persons would say these things to me, and I watched them as they would say it, you could see in their faces the love and admiration that they still have for him. And as a child growing up, again, we had photographs of him in our house. I can't remember any home I walked into in those days that didn't have at least one picture of Joe Louis.
See.
And on the Fridays before his fights, which were usually at 10 o'clock at night, we would have a vigil at our church. And we'd all have a prayer meeting for Joe, singing prayers to him. And the minister
No wonder he won all those fights.
and the minister say, ain't nobody going to beat that boy as long as we send him our love. It's our love that makes him strong. And he knows we loves him. And we believe that. We really believe that. And, that our prayers and our love reached him. And he drew from that strength and allowed him to fight. In his first fight with Max Schmeling, he was hit 72 times in the face, in the jaw, with a right hand. 72 times. And he withstood it for 12 rounds. And the minister said he couldn't have taken that. He couldn't have taken that unless he knew we were watching and we were trying to get, but he just couldn't take no more. But he loved us. And so these were the kinds of feelings that emanated from the community, from my family, and so on. And it was great. It was great.
So when you talk to Timuel Black later today, is there something specific you want to try and pull out of him that you haven't gotten elsewhere?
Yeah, I spoke to Tim on the phone a couple of times, and he related to me that he had experiences with Louis himself in 1937, especially after he won the title here in Chicago at Comiskey Park, and that at the Armory after that fight, there was a big band celebration, and it was Chick Webb and Tommy Dorsey and all the great bands, but Joe Louis walked from Comiskey Park to this Armory to be there that night.
Right.
And he talked about the experiences with Joe in that vein. And again, I'm trying to get first-hand accounts of the spiritual feeling that Joe Louis gave people. And I think that Tim's going to be able to give that to me, for me.
Well, I'm rooting for you to have a real connection with Dr. Black. He's a great friend of ours and a great friend of Chicago's, and a history walking in his body. So he's very conscious of that. Before we say goodbye, I would like to congratulate you on your work in Africa. You have a school in Africa? Where?
I have an orphanage.
Oh, an orphanage.
Yeah,
okay.
I had been taking students from my school many years earlier on safari. I taught environmental science, and I did nature walks in Botswana and Malawi and Namibia and so on.
Wow.
And when I went further north, I went into Tanzania, and one day I saw 4 little boys climbing out of a dumpster. And the boys are no more than 3 or 4 years old. And they were eating food that had maggots crawling all over it. But it didn't bother them. The food had a stench to it, but it didn't bother them because they needed to nourish themselves. And I got the idea that I've got to find a way to do something. So with people's help back in the States, I started this foundation, opening an orphanage just for boys. And we've been in business now for about 7.5 years. It's a struggle because it's hard to raise money, as you can imagine. Yep. But it's something that I love to do, and it's worthwhile doing. And
is there a website you want to lead people to, maybe to get more information? Or?
I don't have the number with me.
Okay. Well, Jim at jimarden.org might work.
Yes, it would.
Jim Arden, brother of my partner and a longtime friend. Great good luck to you today in your research here in Chicago. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's hear it for Jim Arden, everybody. Yay.